Now, yesterday was a very busy wrestling day. Yesterday was a day where AEW All Out was scheduled for 8 p.m. Eastern in Toronto, and it ended up going on at 3 p.m. Eastern. So the show got bumped up by 5 hours because WWE decided to schedule Wrestlepalooza, and if they are to be believed, it had very little, if anything, to do as a counter-programming measure because of another wrestling promotion that was running a show. Sure thing. During the All Out press scrum when the show was over, Tony Khan was asked about potentially making that a permanent move. And the person noted that the earlier start time makes it more convenient for fans in the UK. To which Tony said, "It's been tremendous for 3 straight pay-per-views. I think the point that you're making is definitely something I take into consideration. And we've had great results, great buys from the UK. The TV ratings in the UK are through the roof. And I'm really glad you asked that because that's absolutely one of the considerations that we have thought about here. And whether it's Saturday or Sunday, it's definitely giving me something to think about." That might be the best thing to come out of this counter-programming crap. If we start getting more afternoon shows from AEW, especially as long as their shows are, it is much more palatable at 3 in the afternoon than it would be if they were first going on at 8 o'clock at night. So, and I think, honestly, obviously for the UK fans, it sounds like that's something they would prefer. I would think most people would probably prefer that unless you live, maybe in Australia or something, you might not like that. I'm sure there are some places in the world where, depending on what time zone you live in, you might hear him say that and be like, fuck, no. But me personally, I'm all in. I mean, no pun intended. I'm all in on the earlier start times if this becomes a normal thing going forward. So that might be one of the big positives for me coming out of this counter-programming nonsense. But I watched All Out. And then when Wrestlepalooza started, I shifted over to Wrestlepalooza. And like I said, I watched the main event this morning. That was the only match I did not get to see last night. I watched All Out. I liked All Out. And All Out was definitely the stronger of the 2 shows yesterday. Some people aren't going to like that. Tough shit. All Out was better than Wrestlepalooza. We got some great matches, including a big title change. We had some returns. We had a reunion. We had a debut that I wasn't expecting, although I probably should have been, given that Dax dropped her name in a promo on TV last week. And they're without some big names right now, right? No Kenny Omega, no Will Ospreay, no Swerve Strickland. But they have no shortage of talent on that roster to step up and fill those voids. And one thing that struck me watching this show is how much the tag team division has been revived, which I'm going to talk more about later. Like, it felt like it was on life support for a while there compared to how it used to be. Like, that used to be their calling card in the early days of AEW, and they got away from that. But they have really come around on that front, and I think we could have another tag team renaissance in this company if Tony can put all the pieces together in the right place. Now, I ordered this show through HBO Max, okay, because this was the first AEW pay-per-view that was available for purchase live on HBO Max. For all the talk about Wrestlepalooza being the start of the ESPN era for WWE, you can get the show in the ESPN app and some of the confusion that was attached to that. This was also the beginning of a new era, I guess, in that regard for AEW, in that you can now order the shows on Max. And if you do, then you would get them at a reduced price instead of $50, which a lot of people pay for on these other platforms like Amazon Prime. Or YouTube, you can get it for $10 cheaper if you get it through HBO Max. So off I went into my HBO Max app on my iPad, because I actually watch Dynamite on Max every week. I don't watch it through the YouTube TV. I mean, I do have TNT and TBS, but I have found that for me, the viewing experience is easier. And I actually kind of feel like the picture looks better, oddly enough, watching it through the HBO Max app, which I have a subscription to anyway. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go into the HBO Max app and it should be right there and we'll buy the show and great. It'll be $39.99. And so I confirmed the purchase for $39.99. And then 10 seconds later, I get an email receipt from my, payment method, my payment vendor that I use through HBO Max. And I get a receipt for $50. I'm like, fuck me. No discount for Solomonster, I guess. Now, whether or not that's because Apple fucked me, I mean, the email did not come, the confirmation did not come from HBO Max. I don't know that it's an HBO Max thing or a Warner thing. Maybe it is. Or if it's an Apple thing. I tried to call Apple, and obviously I'm also trying to watch these shows yesterday, and the wait time was just horrendous. So as I sit here right now, I still don't have a good explanation for it, but I did not get any discount yesterday. And yes, I had people making fun of me. Oh, you should have used that VPN of yours. And, it's only $20 on Triller. I'll know better for next time. Now, they opened with a video package for Adam Copeland and Christian Cage against FTR, which is the match that was kicking off the show. They show footage from earlier in the day of Copeland and Christian walking backstage, looking at pictures of various Toronto Maple Leaf players on the wall. And they run into Wendell Clark. After seeing a picture of Wendell Clark on the wall, they run into Wendell Clark. And Copeland marks out, and Christian didn't even acknowledge him, didn't sell it at all. So then after, exchanging some words, I love how Wendell Clark apparently is just randomly standing in a hallway up against an equipment case. This is like a video game cutscene where, you're in the backstage area and there's just various people standing there doing absolutely nothing. That was Wendell Clark here in this segment. Apparently in his retirement, he has nothing better to do. So after this, they run into Bubbles of the Trailer Park Boys, who broke out his green bastard pro wrestling character. Christian cracked some jokes about his mother and he left. Copeland told the green bastard that Christian's an asshole, but he's my asshole. And that led into Adam Copeland and the asshole, Christian Cage, taking on FTR. So the crowd was loud for the two Canadians in Canada, as you would imagine. Dax Harwood was wrestling with a badly broken nose from Wednesday night, but he was not wearing any kind of, protective mask or anything like that. Copeland paid homage to John Cena at one point for delivering a "you can't see me" and then an attitude adjustment for a near fall, and the crowd went crazy for it. That was a cool moment. They started chanting Cena's name. Probably the first time we've heard John Cena's name chanted during an AEW show. But this follows, Cena using Edge's spear in, was it the Cody match or was it the match with Logan? I think it was the match with Logan. So that's cool. They're just paying homage to each other. It's too bad we can't see them back in the ring one more time. Obviously, that's not possible. So just a little nod to one of his all-time rivals. A show of respect. So FTR went for a heart attack at one point. Copeland and Christian swept out both their legs into stereo sharpshooters. Wheeler, Cash Wheeler, not Wheeler Yuta, literally had to slap his own partner to prevent him from tapping. Stokely Hathaway pushed the ropes in to help give them the break. Cage and Copeland, they tried a Hardy Boys homage. Harwood, though, escaped a twist of fate attempt from Christian, shoved him forward, and so Christian crotched Copeland on the top rope. We got a powerplex from FTR that connected, but Wheeler was too slow to cover, only got a near fall. Copeland avoided a shatter machine, which allowed Copeland then to hit a kill switch, and Christian hit a spear at the same time. Stokely pulled the referee out of the ring at 2. Everyone's booing, and suddenly we hear music that we've never heard before. And out walked Beth Phoenix, or Beth Copeland, right? No longer Beth Phoenix. She sprints down the ramp. She flattens Stokely with a spear. Just what we need. More spears. I just talked about this the other week. Everybody does the spear now. I mean, I guess, her husband does it, so whatever. But, do we really need more spears? So she spears Stokely and then picks him up and carries him over her head to the back. So now he's gone. Cash Wheeler tried to blindside Copeland with the ring bell, but got low bridge to the floor as Harwood now is begging off. And he's pleading with Copeland. He's apologizing to him. He's on his knees. So wanting a spike pile driver, Wheeler cut off Christian by dragging him to the floor with a powerbomb onto the announce desk, which did not break. Paul Turner, the referee, he went to go check on him. That allowed Wheeler to blast Copeland with the ring bell, and FTR followed that up with a spike pile driver, only for 2. Copeland again fought off a shatter machine. This time he laid out both FTR members with impaler DDTs. Copeland charged for a spear, but he ran right into a shatter machine. Eddie kicked out at 2. They hit a second one. They wanted a third one. Wheeler got leveled by a right hand, though, from Christian from the floor. Kind of reached up and socked him in the face. And that caused him to stumble backwards into a spear by Copeland. And Copeland collapsed on top of him. Christian, meanwhile, is holding Dax Harwood's leg. He's trying to crawl in to save his partner, but Christian's got a hold of him. He can't go anywhere. And Copeland gets the pin. 50-year-old Adam Copeland ate a ring bell shot, a spike pile driver, and a shatter machine. And he kicked out of all of them. And then he won the match with a single spear. And I thought it was ridiculous when he beat Malachi Black. With a broken leg, no less. But this takes the cake. After the match, Beth came back to the ring. And as Copeland tried to hug Christian, Christian wasn't really, he was allowing him to hug him, but he wasn't like reciprocating. So as this was happening, they were interrupted by Mother Wayne pushing Nick Wayne onto the stage. He was in a wheelchair. First time we've seen Nick Wayne in many weeks since he broke his foot. FTR then blindsided Cope and Christian as Kip Sabian appeared. He handcuffed Copeland to the ropes. I think was it the bottom rope? I forgot, but he handcuffed him to the ropes. And Beth is frantically trying to get her husband free. Meanwhile, FTR lays out Christian with a spike pile driver. And now they're stalking Beth. And Beth she kind of sees the situation. She knows she's fucked. She turns to her husband. She gives him a kiss. And then she starts throwing bombs at FTR. And she got a few shots in, but FTR ended up laying her out as well with a spike pile driver right in front of her husband. And all Copeland could do is just watch, right? Because he's cuffed to the ropes. He can't free himself. This was basically the Extreme Rules angle they did with them in the Judgment Day a few years ago. But it was effective, right? It was effective then. And I think it was effective now. It adds more heat to a feud that they obviously want to continue. The match itself, I thought it was a good match. I thought it was a good opener. It just got very ridiculous there at the end with Copeland kicking out from so many big moves like he was really tapping into Super Cena from many years ago. And then he wins with one spear. But between FTR laying out Beth and the matriarchy coming out to interfere there at the end, Copeland and Christian, their respective problems have overlapped now. And so they're going to need to continue working together to fight them off. So they may hold off longer than I thought to put the tag team titles on them, which, again, it's just inevitable to me. But we're getting at least one more match with Cope and Christian and FTR. And we should finally get that singles match with Christian and Nick Wayne that we never got once Nick is medically cleared. I don't know how much longer he's going to be in that wheelchair, or maybe he doesn't need to be in a wheelchair. Maybe they're going to milk it for a little bit, but we should get a singles match between him and Christian at some point. Now, Eddie Kingston has not wrestled since, what was it, April or May of last year. That was against Gabe Kidd in a New Japan ring, and boy, did he fuck up his leg. He tore everything in his leg. He broke his leg. It was a horrendous injury. He couldn't even have surgery on his leg until July of last year when the swelling went down. So he's been out for a very long time. And he was advertised to have his return match here on this show, even though we have not seen him in 16 months. He was advertised to return on this show against Big Bill. Let me get the nice part out of the way first. After 16 months, it was good to see Eddie Kingston back on TV. He came out with his Claudio Sucks Eggs t-shirt. He got a nice welcome back from the fans. And it was all downhill after that. This was a very sloppy match. Not a lot of heat, a lot of sloppy spots. There was a boss man slam that Big Bill went for at one point, and he hit it, but man, was it a struggle. And it was bad enough that he did it over again. Bill wanted a choke slam. Kingston countered into a desperation DDT. Eddie signaled for the spinning back fist, the Hurricane. He connected with it. Bill kicked out at 1, which surprised Kingston, who ran into a big boot. Bill missed a corner splash, and in so doing, he smashed his face into the top part of the ring post, right? He posted himself. Eddie then rolled him up. Bill kicked out. And Eddie then swung for the fences with another back fist. And he completely whiffed. He would fit perfectly on the New York Mets. So he swung and he missed, to the point where even the announcers acknowledged that he missed it, right? They didn't like, oh, he just barely grazed. Like, no, he missed it. Unfortunately, it was the finish, and they didn't think to redo it. Like earlier in the match, Bill redid the Boss Man Slam, right? Or the Black Hole Slam. And that wasn't even the finish. If you were going to redo anything, it should have been this. But they didn't do it. So Eddie covered him and he pinned him. He caught Bill with a back fist earlier, and Bill kicked out at 1. Then he missed him with the back fist, and that was enough for the pin. Completely ruined the finish. There were parts of the match where the crowd was actually dead silent. The sloppiness and the terrible finish didn't help. There was no story to this to begin with. It was just a way to get Eddie on the show and to give him a win in his comeback. But this was a fail, I'm sorry to say. Now, after the match, Brian Keith attacked Kingston. Bill and Keith, they continued to beat down Eddie as the lights went out. And we see the H symbol appear in the rafters for Hook, which got no reaction from the crowd in Toronto. And he came out to his new crooner music. He low-bridged Bill. He sank Red Rum in on Brian Keith, after which Kingston blasted Keith with the back fist. At least, thankfully, this one connected. And then Kingston and Hook, they hugged, and they left together. Now, remember, Hook did say that he might have to join a new crew after leaving the Ops. So it looks like he found a new partner in Eddie Kingston. So we'll see where that goes. I think there was potential to get Eddie into the Death Rider stuff. They're obviously going a different way. The Death Riders seem to be getting stronger, not weaker. But for the time being, it looks like Eddie is going to be involved in some way with Hook. I don't know if they're going to be a tag team. I don't know if there's going to be a new crew that forms, as if we don't have enough of those in this company. But that's what Eddie will be occupied with. We had MJF against Mark Brisco in a tables and tacks match. Now, MJF had a very busy weekend because he was in Mexico, I think it was Arena Mexico, on Friday night at the CMLL 92nd anniversary show. Yes, the oldest wrestling promotion in the world and the hottest wrestling promotion in the world. Like, when I read these reports about the tickets they're selling and the business they're doing down there in Mexico, it is ridiculous. That is a promotion that is on fire right now. And MJF has been the CMLL light heavyweight champion now for a few months. So he was scheduled to defend that title against Mystico on Friday night, which he did, and he lost. And not only did he lose, but he tapped out, which goes to show you the strength of the partnership between CMLL and AEW, that would even ever be allowed to happen. But that's how it should be, you know? I mean, these two guys had a feud that spanned months across multiple promotions. And multiple times, MJF beat down Mystico, and he ripped his mask off, and he embarrassed him, and he insulted him, and all. So you had to build to a decisive win for Mystico. It doesn't get any more decisive than him tapping out. And this is a feud, by the way, that not only has spanned months, but it has spanned months across multiple promotions. Not just CMLL and AEW, but MLW. MJF even showed up to attack him at a Ring of Honor taping. The only time you'll ever see MJF show up in Ring of Honor. So this needed to be decisive, and it doesn't get any more so than that. Now, after wrestling in Mexico at 1 a.m, MJF made it to Canada to wrestle third from the bottom here on this show. And he was also wearing all white, which was very much done on purpose. I mean, he was, white shirt, white pants. So you knew that he wasn't going to be white for much longer. Once the blood started flowing, my God, it wasn't even his blood, but with all the blood on his pants, he looked like he was on his period. Now, you knew that this was going to be a bloody, violent match coming into it. I mean, the fucking stipulation was tables and tacks, okay? So you can't plead ignorance and say, man, I wasn't expecting this. Like, yes, you knew what to expect coming into it. Somehow it was even more ridiculous than I thought it would be. They had buckets of thumbtacks in all four corners of the ring. Tables were set up at ringside. Bryce Remsburg had goggles on and oven mitts on his hands to protect himself. I would be in a whole-ass bee suit if you asked me to referee a match like this. MJF immediately took a powder outside. Brisco wasted no time in taking every bucket and pouring out all of the tacks all over the ring. The ring was littered in thumbtacks. There were so many tacks that both guys were sliding around like they were ice skating. And he body slammed Briscoe onto the tacks. And then he also drove him, like he grabbed his head and was driving him down head first into the tacks. So MJF draws first blood. He played Rambo here in this match. MJF ripped Briscoe's shirt off. He delivered an Alabama slam onto the tacks. Briscoe, though, kicked out. And then after dragging Briscoe through the tacks, MJF put tacks in his mouth and he fired off a right-hand shot. Then he delivered multiple backdrops onto the tacks, just one after the other after the other. MJF called for another one. Briscoe flipped onto his feet, though, and he got one on MJF. Now, there were some table spots outside where Briscoe just killed him. Back in the ring, Briscoe delivered a power bomb onto the tacks before pulling out a tack-covered chair from under the ring. It was tables and tacks, but now we have chairs in this match. It's just... why did you just call it a thumbtacks match? You had thumbtacks on the floor, right? You had a thumbtack chair. You had tables. You could have had a thumbtack ladder. You could have had, what else could you have had? You could have had a thumbtack cookie sheet. You could have, we've seen the Young Bucks have sneakers with thumbtacks in them. So Briscoe wanted a chair shot to the head with it. MJF got a low blow and a chair shot to the back before hitting a tombstone onto the tacks. Briscoe still kicked out. MJF at this point is just picking the tacks out of his hands. And he pulls a table into the ring and he pours bags of tacks onto them. And he wants a power bomb. And Briscoe punched his way free, but he got crotched in the corner. And MJF wanted his avalanche tombstone that he does, but Briscoe got out of that. He wanted an avalanche J driller. But MJF bit his way free. Briscoe returned the favor, and then he dove off the top with a froggy bow as the table exploded and tacks are just raining down through the air. So then we got a proper froggy bow. Briscoe planted MJF with a J driller onto the tacks, and he got the win. This match was basically, if I had to describe it, it was a 20-minute Saw movie. Now, I liked some of the Saw movies, but if I wanted to watch a Saw movie, then I would watch a Saw movie. Both guys have my respect for the effort and the punishment they took, but this just wasn't my thing. MJF has proven that he can hang in whatever type of match you put him in, whether it's hardcore, Iron Man, dog collar, whatever it may be. They made the most of the stipulation. I'm just not a fan of it. I was a little surprised that Briscoe went over here, but MJF now appears to be in this losing streak phase, right? That's what it feels like. He lost to Hangman. He lost his CMLL title to Mystico. He just lost to Mark Briscoe, but he still has that guaranteed contract that he can cash in. So him losing here doesn't matter because I think it's part of a larger story that they're doing with him. And also, all he needs to do is show up on TV on Wednesday and just say that the only reason he lost is because he had to stoop to Mark Briscoe's level and play by his silly deathmatch rules. So MJF is going to be fine. Mark Briscoe gets a rare big win, especially on a pay-per-view. I don't know that it's going to lead to anything major for him. I don't know where he goes from here in terms of like a championship that he would challenge for. But for him, you could argue it was a much needed win to give him a nice shot of credibility at that level. But for MJF, it's just another match for him. And he'll move on. And when the time is right, he'll cash in that contract and he'll win back the world championship. Lexi Nair was outside in the parking lot and approached Anthony Bowens, Max Caster, and Jerry Lynn, all of whom were arguing. Jerry Lynn has been trying to reunite the two of them. This has been a collision storyline. And Jerry said that he jumped through a lot of hoops to get to a tag team match next week against Swirl. And I hear this and I'm like, what the fuck is Swirl? I thought I misheard him at first and he said Swerve. I got you a tag team match against Swerve. And I said, boy, he recovered awfully quick from that knee surgery. And why are they bringing him back at a handicap match? But yeah, I don't know what the fuck a Swirl is. But they need to go back to the drawing board on that name. I know that. So both men refused to team up. And Jerry said that if they don't show up, they'll be suspended. And Caster and Bowens, they start bickering like an old married couple. Caster gives him a shove. And when Bowens turns around to go take a shot at him, Caster was already gone. So they're admitting that trying to push these two as singles and breaking them up was a failure. So they're putting them back together. And honestly, it's the right move. We had Ricochet and the Gates of Agony, who are now going by the name The Demand. Hopefully one day there will actually be a demand for this crew. They took on the Hurt Syndicate. Now, MVP wanted Ricochet at the start. He got all of 3 seconds before Ricochet tagged in Bishop Khan. The heels isolated MVP. They targeted his left knee. Lashley tagged in. He had Ricochet beat. Toa Leona broke up the pin. Shelton Benjamin tagged in. He tossed Ricochet into the air. He just let him fall to the mat. Benjamin hit a German suplex that sent Ricochet into his own corner. Bishop tagged in. Benjamin landed German suplexes on Ricochet and the good Bishop, and then executed a double German on both men at the same time. And then a little while later, Toa Leona ran in. He got the better of Benjamin until he turned into a spear from Bobby Lashley, who followed up with a spear on his partner. Lashley had Bishop Khan pinned. Ricochet nailed a springboard 450 splash to break up the pin. And Lashley and Toa Leona, they ended up fighting at ringside. Lashley charged in for a spear. Leona held up a chair and then hoisted Lashley up on his shoulders. Benjamin, though, intervened. And so Bishop took out Benjamin, and Ricochet did a flip dive over the ring post onto Lashley and Benjamin. So Ricochet and Bishop Khan, they whipped Toa Leona into Lashley and Benjamin, and all three men go tumbling over the barricade. Meanwhile, in the ring, Ricochet dove off the top at MVP, who caught him and suplexed him. MVP set up for his playmaker. Bishop, though, hit him with a chop block, and Ricochet hit MVP with the Spirit Gun for the win. This was a much-needed victory for Ricochet and his crew, and it went exactly the way that I said it would, with MVP being the one to do the honors here, to save Lashley and Benjamin from taking the loss. That's why MVP was in the match. And the match was solid. I mean, it was solid stuff. It felt more like a TV match than one that needed to be on this pay-per-view. In fact, this match did not need to be on this pay-per-view. It makes sense for the Demand, I guess that's their name now, the Demand, to challenge the Ops. Man, some of these names, man, what is going on here with these names? The Ops, the Demand, Swirl. Who's coming up with these names? But it would make sense for Ricochet and the Gates of Agony to challenge the Ops for the Trios titles, which they said they would be going after at the scrum after the show. So they've already kind of planted that flag in the ground that they're coming after the Trios titles. As far as the Hurt Syndicate goes, there's been chatter about them adding a new member soon. Maybe this is the impetus for that, where MVP realizes maybe he feels responsible for what happened, and he realizes that he let his guys down. They need that third person. It just can't be him. Especially if we end up getting a rematch, that could be where the new member debuts. I just take your pick as far as who you think would be the best fit for this group. I mean, they have options. You can pluck out any number of young talents on the roster who could get the rub, from rubbing shoulders with Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin. I don't know that I necessarily am married to one specific person that I feel like it has to be, but there could be a new member coming soon if these rumors are true. We had Mercedes Moné against Riho for the TBS Championship. If there was one problem coming into this match, it's that not a single person honestly believed that Riho had a chance of winning the TBS title. That may have been one of the reasons why the crowd was so dead for this match. That and Riho just coming back and being thrown into a title match, because these people could barely be bothered to care for most of this match. They work well enough together. Moné locked in a pendulum swing submission at one point, then a Romero special, which Riho was able to escape. Moné went to the eyes. Both women were up, and Riho hit La Mystica before locking in a statement maker of her own. Both women fought up the ropes. Moné connected with a superplex, hung on into the Three Amigos before heading back up top for a frog splash, but Riho got the knees up. Moné missed a charging double knee in the corner. She got trapped. That allowed Riho to hit a double stomp for 2. Riho went for a crucifix bomb, but Moné grabbed the referee, which gave her a chance to rake the eyes. She hit a lung blower. and then a Mone Maker for the very anticlimactic win. I thought the wrestling here was solid, but there just wasn't any excitement. I mean, just really in any aspect of this. It was, a well-worked match. That's the best thing I can really say about it. I mean, they're just keeping that title warm for the celebration next month when she becomes the longest reigning TBS champion of all time. We're less than a month away from that. We had Kazuchika Okada, Konosuke Takeshita, and Mascara Dorado in a three-way for the AEW Unified Championship. Coming into this, I was critical of why this needed to be a three-way match. I figured the reason they did it was to protect Takeshita from taking the loss directly, but it just felt so unnecessary to me. I'm happy to say that I'm glad they turned it into a three-way. They won me over here. I'm glad they turned it into a three-way because this match was everything here on this show. Now, Don Callis joined on commentary. He said he likes his family's odds of retaining the title here. Yeah, I'll bet. Dorado was fending for himself against the other two in the early going, but then we got Okada and Takeshita going at it. As quiet as the crowd was for that last match, and even parts of this one, they were quiet for, but Dorado was like a one-man show out there. I mean, he was lighting this crowd up with every big dive. At one point, Dorado charged into a double big boot, and that left Takeshita and Okada staring at each other. We got this great crowd shot, too, where they're standing right next to each other, and then they kind of slowly turn to look at each other, and you could hear the crowd rises. Takeshita put everything behind a forearm shot. Both men traded tombstone attempts until Takeshita got a bastard driver into the German. But Okada no-sold it. He popped up into a drop kick and a tombstone. And with both men down, Dorado tried a moonsault. Okada moved, so Dorado hit a running shooting star on Takeshita. We got a shooting star attempt on Okada, who got his knees up. Takeshita was there to hit a huge power bomb into the power drive knee. Takeshita loaded up for one on Okada, who blocked it and then hit a drop kick right on the button. All three men were down. And tons of chants from the crowd. This is awesome. Fight forever. I mean, they were into this now. Okada tried a Rainmaker on Dorado, who ducked, and Takeshita hit a wild double German. Okada went to the apron. Dorado connected on a diving DDT and just spiked him right on the apron. Quickly back up top, Dorado got crotched by Takeshita, who hit a superplex, held on into the raging fire. When Okada slid back in, he wanted a Rainmaker. Takeshita, though, landed a forearm shot, only to run into a drop kick, sending Takeshita out to the floor. And Okada quickly grabbed Mascara Dorado. He hit a Rainmaker, and he won the match. He barely survived is what he did, but he retained the unified title. This was easily the match of the night up to this point. You could even argue it was the match of the weekend. It's certainly in the conversation, but it was easily the match of the night up to this point, and one of the best matches all weekend. For Dorado, this was his standout performance so far in AEW. He really he brought it. He knew what his role was, but he said, you know what? I'm still going to go in there and I'm going to throw everything I got at these people. And I'm going to make sure that when this match is over, they're talking about me. Because he knew that he was eating the pin at the end of this. But, damn it, he was going to make sure that he made the most of the opportunity. And what we got out of Okada and Takeshita was just enough to, pique your interest to want to see a proper singles match between them. And I bring up the Continental Classic because that is the perfect place to make that happen, because we know Okada is going to be in it, and it may be predictable, but this is one of those situations where just because it's predictable does not mean that you don't do it. That tournament should come down to Okada and Takeshita winning the unified title. But this was excellent stuff. Then we had Jon Moxley against Darby Allin in a coffin match. Darby cut Moxley off in the crowd as he was making his entrance. Of course, he did a coffin drop off the ledge by one of the entrance tunnels onto a standing Moxley. They fought through the crowd and down to ringside. He was biting at Moxley's ear, and I don't know what he did, but Moxley was bleeding profusely from the ear. So Moxley stood the coffin upright, coffin that was on the floor outside. That gave Darby time to fly in from the ring with one of his suicide missile dives, and the coffin fell over with both men landing trapped inside, like the lid shut behind them. It was actually a cool visual. There was another Darby dive out on the other side in front of the announcers, where Moxley caught him flying in with a cutter on the floor. Claudio, Wheeler Yuta, and Daniel Garcia, they made their way to ringside, and they helped Moxley put the coffin in the ring as Marina Shafir is loosening the bottom rope with a wrench. So Moxley sends them to the back. As quickly as they came, he sent them all, except Marina. He sent the rest of them to the back. As Darby crawled back into the ring, allowing Moxley to slam the lid of the coffin shut on Darby's hand. Moxley mounted Darby on top of the coffin, and he's right in his face, and he's screaming at him that, he works harder than everyone and how he loves Darby, and then he kissed him on the mouth. Like, what kind of snuff film am I watching here? Danielson, on commentary, said that Moxley told him the same thing before turning on him as Darby tried to fight back, but he did a coffin splash into a rear naked choke. Allen had a fork that was hidden in one of the turnbuckles, like under the pads, and he started stabbing Moxley repeatedly in his bald head with the fork, which opened him up even more. Now there's more blood pouring out of his head. He followed that with a coffin drop from the top rope to the floor. Danielson said that he promised to be objective, but fuck that, let's go Darby. And Darby then hit a coffin drop onto the coffin before trapping Moxley's hands inside the coffin. He stomped on it. Scorpion death drop connects. Darby grabs a pipe from under the ring, and that little delay allowed Moxley to grab the fork and try to stab Darby with it, who gouged at the eye, got the fork, and he mutilated Moxley's ear with it. Remember what I said earlier about the tables and tacks stuff with MJF and Mark Brisco? Yeah, the same thing applies here. I don't know who this was for, but this was not for me. So Moxley brought Darby on top of the coffin, and he hit a Death Rider. And he placed Darby inside the coffin, and he tried slamming the lid shut, but Darby held the pipe out to prevent the lid from fully closing. Darby climbed out. He began choking Moxley with the pipe as they spilled outside, where Darby smashed him in the head with it. Bryan Danielson, who gave Darby his word on Wednesday that he would not get involved in the match, grabbed a duffel bag from under the announce desk, and he just moved it over within view so that Darby could use it. He told him to do it. And Darby pulled out a plastic bag. And Danielson told him to give Moxley what he deserves. So I guess we know what he whispered to Darby on Wednesday. Darby placed the bag over Moxley's head, which filled with blood instantly, before giving him a code red, and the bag went flying off Moxley's head. So he put the bag back over Moxley's head, and he delivered the Bryan Danielson-esque stomps. The crowd began chanting, "This is murder." We saw a lot of that on this show. He placed Moxley in the coffin, but before he could shut the lid, Pac returned. And I will tell you, I did not realize initially who it was because he looks very different. He is rocking a new short hair look, this new short haircut. He actually was wearing a shirt. That was honestly more shocking than the new haircut. I just assumed that he's just always in his gear, shirtless wherever he goes. That's how he sleeps. That's how he wakes up in the morning. That's how he looks at the gym. He powerbombed Darby from inside the ring onto the lid of the outside casket, which I'm sure did not feel too good. I mean, made a nice dent, made a nice thud on his way down. He threw Darby back inside. He placed him in a body bag, and then he placed him inside the coffin in the ring, where Moxley then kicked the door shut. And the lid was actually not secured perfectly, but it was on, I guess, enough for the referee to call for the bell, and he gave the win to Jon Moxley. After it was over, though, all the Death Riders reappeared, and they carried the coffin out like a funeral procession. Moxley was screaming at the fans that he didn't want this, it wasn't his fault. Danielson was just speechless on commentary, as Excalibur said, between adding Daniel Garcia and getting Pac back, the Death Riders are more dangerous than ever. See, that's the worst part of all. They are now as strong as they have ever been. They are not going anywhere. But this was what you would have expected. was lots of brutality and lots of blood, Darby taking a lot of stupid bumps, and it was a win for the Death Riders, which is what I called in my predictions, because it always felt to me like this was building to something bigger. This was not the end of the issue between Moxley and Darby. And on that note, later in the show, skipping ahead here, Marina Shafir is screaming at the cameraman backstage to film this right now. The coffin is set up, and Jon Moxley said he hopes Darby Allin gets the message this time. So Shafir and Pac and Claudio and Garcia, they all take off in a truck, right? He sends them away. And after doing so, Darby pops out of the coffin, and he blasts Moxley with a pipe. Allin got Moxley in the body bag, and he said not to be surprised when he pulls him into the fire. And with that, he sprayed the body bag down with some lighter fluid, and he set it on fire. He set it ablaze, and Moxley is struggling inside the bag. Let him cook, as the kids say. Darby setting Moxley on fire wasn't even the craziest thing to happen on this show. So Moxley was quickly extinguished backstage by some personnel. Darby got dragged away screaming, "Burn, burn!" So what are we thinking? Maybe an Inferno match for Wrestle Dream? There is also the possibility that we may get a blood and guts match after all. You got Moxley and the Death Riders on one side. On the other side, you could have a team led by Darby. So I could definitely see something like that happening. Bryan Danielson on commentary was disappointed that nobody came out to help Darby. So that could be playing into something as well. The conglomeration were backstage talking about everybody picking up wins tonight, including on the pre-show. Willow was there, and Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly. All the conglomerates were all there. And Mark Brisco was there, and he's caked in dried blood from his win earlier. And he said it's time to look forward to another man who's been a thorn in his ass, and that's Don Callis. And he challenged Don Callis to find 3 of his men and ask Kyle O'Reilly, who was on the phone, if he's ready to come back. And Kyle said, whatever. And the live crowd popped huge because they knew exactly who he was referring to. So we're getting the return of Orange Cassidy on Dynamite this Wednesday. We had the 4-way for the AEW Women's World Championship with Timeless Toni Storm defending against Jamie Hayter, Chris Statlander, and Tekla. Statlander has new theme music that is not terrible, but I do wonder if it may only be temporary after what we saw at the end of this match, if she was possibly going to go heel soon. Wheeler Yuta showed up right at the beginning here to try to give her some last-minute advice, and he got told to go get lost, so he left. Statlander dodged 3 corner attacks before Tekla found herself in the Tree of Woe, only to deliver 3 separate spider superplexes. And then she hit her spider pose. Tekla, she didn't see Storm appear and yell, "I hate bugs," which made me laugh. And then she stomped Tekla in the yam bag region, as Taz would say. See, I hate bugs too. They're just the fucking worst. You got to stomp those things out. So Hayter dished out some exploders before hitting a double suplex on Statlander and Toni Storm. We got a sky high from Toni on Tekla as Statlander flew in with a rolling cutter. Hayter was up, though, for a home run lariat into the reset. All 4 women rose to their feet. Tekla got mowed down with a triple big boot. Statlander was clotheslined to the floor. Storm and Hayter, they were about to have a showdown, but Tekla chop blocked Hayter's leg. And then trapping both women's heads between her legs, Tekla tried a head scissors in the ropes, but Statlander caught Tekla into Saturday Night Fever on the floor. Back inside, Storm delivered Sweet Cheek music and Storm Zero to Statlander, but Hayter dove over to break up the pin. Storm and Hayter, they traded finisher attempts until Hayter hit a Hate Breaker and Haterade, which Tekla then broke up after that. Tekla got pulled to the apron by Hayter, and Tekla hit a wild spear to the floor. Inside the ring, Statlander quickly hooked a seatbelt pinning combination in on Toni Storm, and she got the flash pin to win the title. That came out of nowhere. And the crowd was stunned. So was Toni. Toni Storm sold it. She had this almost catatonic, I don't know if it was catatonic or psychotic look or smile on her face. Statlander got pyro for her celebration. She's got the AEW World Championship hoisted up, and they're firing off the pyro for her. Tony retreats up the ramp, still looking almost catatonic. Harley Cameron sprinted to the ring to celebrate with Statlander, who, gave a nod to Tony Storm on the ramp. Excalibur said that Tony put herself in this position by asking for this four-way match. So first things first, really good match. These four work well together. I called this one in my predictions. It was the big upset of the night. Sure, absolutely, but it felt like we were getting a title change here. And if Tony wasn't winning, then nobody else in this match made sense but Kris Statlander, especially with the way that she's been courted by the Death Riders of late. Then you see her win the title with the seatbelt pin, which, to be fair, and she said this in the scrum after, Wheeler Yuta is not the only person to use the seatbelt, right? Orange Cassidy has used it before as well. But the question now is, does she go heel and join the Death Riders? I fucking hope not. I really, really hope not. But it is a question that has to be asked. They've certainly been teasing that as a possibility. Death Riders are only growing and getting stronger. Now, you could look at this and go, man, what a waste for Toni Storm to drop that title after all these months, to drop that title in a random four-way. But the story here is that this match was her idea. This is what she wanted. Was she biting off more than she could chew? And then Statlander pinned Tony. So it wasn't one of those deals where the champion lost without getting pinned, which is fucking lame. No, the champion lost. She wanted the match. She got the match. She ate the pin. And Tony had beaten almost everybody else in the division already, including the unbeatable Mercedes. It doesn't bother me that she dropped the title here. It felt like the right time for her to lose the championship. Now, absolutely, we could have come up with better circumstances. It could have been a more focused singles match. All of that is true. But I cannot hate on Kris Statlander finally getting the nod. I'm happy for Statlander getting that big moment. I do think, or worry, that this is setting her up more as a transitional champion than anything else to drop the belt to Mercedes. Right? The first chance they get, they're going to put that fucking belt on Mercedes. And then Tony eventually wins the belt back by beating Mercedes, which she's already done. But I do think there's a very good chance that's where this is headed. But between the shock finish, I guess depending on who you are, you may have been shocked at the finish, and this being a very good match, this ended up being one of the highlights of the night. We had a four-way ladder match for the AEW World Tag Team titles with Brody King and Bandito defending against the Young Bucks, Jet Speed, and Josh Alexander and Hechicero representing the Don Callis family. This is one of those matches where I just watch and I hope that nobody gets seriously injured. There's just so much happening and they just escalate each spot, right? The danger is escalated each one, especially when you have four teams involved. And they had even more than that in the TLC match at SummerSlam. It was the same thing there. The Bucks and the Callis family, they forged an alliance at one point. They set tables up and ladder bridges all around ringside. With Brody King on one of those bridges, Nick Jackson hit a swanton off the top, even though the ladder did not budge. Hechicero and Alexander, they set up Jet Speed on tables, but with their attention turned, the Bucks tried very quickly to scale the ladder, which caused their partnership to end very abruptly. Later on, the Bucks were stacking some tables while Alexander and Mike Bailey, the two Canadian boys, were slugging it out until Hechicero made the save with a surfboard on the ladder bridge. I've not seen a surfboard on a ladder bridge before. That was one of the safer moves I saw in this match. Bailey got out. He tried the moonsault double knees, barely caught Hechicero. Bailey messed up his knees badly, and it looked like Hechicero's fingers got caught in the ladder as well. Bandito and Alexander, they fought up the ladder where Bandito could have grabbed the belts, but he opted to hit a sunset bomb on the ladder. There was an insane spot where Brody King brought Mike Bailey to the apron, and then from the apron, he hit a gonzo bomb through a ladder bridge. Everyone took turns knocking one another off the ladder until Alexander laid out Brody with a torture rack bomb. Kevin Knight climbed the ladder as the Bucks and the Callis family grabbed the ladder and literally lifted it and sent Knight crashing through two tables that were set up on the floor. Alexander went to climb. The Bucks wiped out Hechicero with a super kick and Alexander with a BTE trigger. Brody cut off the Bucks from climbing and handed Bandito a ladder as he moonsaulted off the post onto the Callis family with the ladder. While Brody took out the Bucks with a tope, Bandito then ascended the ladder in the ring and pulled down both belts to retain. This was as wild as you would expect this to be, and a somewhat surprising finish. I really thought the Bucks were going to take it here, but I have no problem with giving Brody King and Bandito a longer run. They make a great team. You know, the real story came after the match, as the Bucks were in the ring all alone, when Jack Perry reappeared in the ring. We have not seen Jack Perry in months, and I don't know how many people even noticed, but there he was. And he flips off the Bucks. He shot a double leg on them. Rocky Romero appeared for some reason, even though he's been part of the Callis family, and he ate a DDT for his troubles. But that distraction was enough for the Bucks to attack Perry, and they were all set up for a BTE trigger. When Perry looked up, very slowly looked up at them with this devilish grin on his face, at which point the lights went out. And then we looked up at the video screen and we got footage of Perry digging a grave or digging up something in the desert somewhere. He pulled a coffin, another coffin, out of the ground. He hooked it to the back of his truck, and he's driving the truck and dragging it somewhere. Sparks are flying as he's dragging this coffin. Then it cut to that footage that we saw previously of Luchasaurus hooked up to tubes and IVs and whatnot, the same video they played when he returned last month. And that's when some people were speculating that the person nursing him back to health was wearing the same kind of shirt or jacket that Jack Perry wears, even though we couldn't see the person's face. Turns out those people were right. It was Jack Perry. And live in the arena, the dinosaur was already in the ring. He was standing behind the Bucks. They turned around. He gave them a double choke slam. Perry pointed to the kill switch belt that he was wearing. It said kill switch on it. So Luchasaurus took it off. He chucked it into the crowd. Kill switch no longer engaged. Luchasaurus is back. And the two of them hugged as they played Tarzan Boy. And I would be lying if I said I wasn't happy to hear that song again. I just love the song. But honestly, this was a cool moment. It was a cool moment, and the crowd reacted big to it. They were all swaying their hands back and forth to the music and singing. I am all for the Jurassic Express reunion. They tried with Jack Perry as a heel, and for various reasons, it did not work out. So this now adds, and here's the real reason I'm happy they did this. It adds another team to a division that is growing stronger of late. They really neglected the tag team division for a very long time after such a strong start in this company. And I think adding trios titles had a lot to do with that. It took their focus away from the tag team division. But right off the bat, Jurassic Express, they have ready-made feuds with the Young Bucks and with Nick Wayne and Kip Sabian. So you look at that tag team division, right? Who do you got? You've got Brodito. You've got the Young Bucks, FTR, Copeland and Christian back together, Jurassic Express reunited. It looks like they're getting the Acclaimed back together. You've got Jet Speed, whatever combination of the Callis family they want to put together any given week. I mean, they have so many members. Same with the Death Riders. You've got the Hurt Syndicate. You've got the Gates of Agony. You've got the Outrunners. You've got the Conglomeration. You've got Big Bill and Brian Keith. Top Flight. It feels like we have a real tag team division back at full strength. That's great news. The main event was Hangman Adam Page defending the AEW World Championship against TNT champion Kyle Fletcher in his first pay-per-view main event, first of what will be many more in the future, I'm sure. If any member of the Callis family interferes, Fletcher would not only lose the match, but he would be stripped of his TNT championship. So with that stipulation added, we at least knew nobody from his crew would be getting involved here, right? That was safe to assume. And I have to say this about Bryan Danielson. I think he has done a really good job on commentary so far since joining the team. That said, he was way over the top at different points of this match, and he even lost his voice here. He needs to tone it down a little bit. There's being animated, and then there's trying too hard, which is what I felt like he was doing here. But I like the insight that he brings, like just little things like him giving Fletcher credit for throwing a kick at one point after there was like a short chop battle saying that wrestlers can get very easily caught up in a battle of egos throwing those chops, so it was smart for him to go for a kick. And Fletcher was dominant for the first, I would say, 10 to 12 minutes of this match, really targeting the neck with a brainbuster and a Michinoku driver, and so he was also drawing attention to that. So there's a lot of little things that Danielson does well. It's just, again, he has a tendency to, and I really noticed it in this match, just, go way over the top. And I think he was even standing up at one point. He was really getting into it. And that's cool. I mean, that he really finds himself getting into it in that way, but it can be distracting. So Fletcher got Page on the barricade outside at one point and gave him a brainbuster through a table set up in the timekeeper's area. Fletcher got Page back inside. He hit him with a brainbuster in the middle of the ring for a near fall. Fletcher got Page on the apron. He set up for a brainbuster through the table down below, but Page slipped out and gave him a deadeye through the table on the floor. Hangman got Fletcher back inside. He went for a buckshot lariat. Fletcher, though, fell down at the exact moment that Page threw the clothesline, so he just barely missed him, and Hangman crashed and burned, and both men were down. Page got to his feet first. He hit a V-trigger. And then he hoisted Fletcher up for a one-winged angel, which the fans were very much excited to see here. And it makes sense because, again, part of the rivalry here is that Kyle Fletcher is the one who put Kenny Omega out of action. So it makes sense. Fletcher escaped, though. Both men jockeyed for position. Page hit a deadeye for a good near fall. Justin Roberts announced that 30 minutes had passed in this match, meaning they had 30 minutes left, because I'm pretty sure these matches have a 60-minute time limit. Fletcher came back with a hidden blade. Page avoided the Tiger Driver and hit a Swerve Strickland-esque JML driver for a near fall. I mean, they were just stealing moves left and right here. I mean, at least it made sense, right? It was either people that they had feuded with or were paying homage to. Page went for a buckshot. Fletcher caught him with an inside cradle for a 2 count. Hangman went for another one. Fletcher, though, hit a brainbuster. And actually, this was a great near fall. Fletcher removed the top turnbuckle pad, and he placed Hangman against the exposed buckle, right? Propped him up against it face first. And he came charging in with a running kick to the back of the head. And Fletcher then set up for a brainbuster from the middle rope. Page fought back. He slammed his head on the exposed buckle, then stood on the middle rope and hit a deadeye off the middle rope. Page followed that with a buckshot lariat for the win. Nearly 40 minutes into this match. Was it overly long? Yes. Yes, it was. This did not need to be 40 minutes, any more so than the mixed tag at Wrestlepalooza needed to be 30 minutes. Like, it could be hard. Like, there are matches that could go 35 minutes, 45 minutes, and you don't even feel it. It's like, it builds to an epic conclusion, and it's like, you know what? It was a long match, but it didn't feel that long, right? It could be hard. It could be hard to find that sweet spot. And then you have matches that I can enjoy very much. I enjoyed the mixed tag last night, but I could also sit here and tell you that it should have been 5 to 10 minutes shorter. And that's how I felt also about the Bandito Hechicero match that I saw, when they had that little snafu with the last Ring of Honor pay-per-view and they put it up on YouTube for free. So I caught the main event. And it was an incredible match, but that match also went almost 40 minutes. That was like a 37-minute match. I think this was a 38-minute match. And just having a long match does not make it a great match. I think sometimes that message can be lost. So, yes, it was a long match. I do still think it was an excellent match, though. And it achieved its goal, which was to position Kyle Fletcher as a future main event player in this company. That was the story coming into the match. You heard the fans at one point here chanting, "You're not ready. You're not ready." Hangman told him the same thing in promos leading up to this show. You're not ready. He proved that he is ready. It's just now is not his time yet. Hangman, though, gave him plenty in this match. He lost, but he comes out of this stronger than he was going in. I believe. I disagree with anybody who feels like, he is coming out of this match worse. There are ways this match could have gone where he would have come out of this match worse off. I don't see how you can honestly and objectively watch the match that these two had and believe that, and believe that Kyle Fletcher came out actually weaker than he was going into it. I don't know who they line up next for Hangman, since I assume they want to save the MJF contract cash in for Full Gear or World's End, or who knows, maybe early 2026. But we have Wrestle Dream coming up next on October 18th. Maybe it's another member of the Don Callis family. Maybe it's Takeshita, right? We don't need him and Okada doing another champion versus champion match. One was enough. We don't need another one back-to-back months. But if Takeshita gets a main event spot, first of all, you know it's going to be a killer match. And when he loses, I could see Okada mocking him for it, and Takeshita entering the Continental Classic where he can kind of get his revenge and then take that title by beating Okada. Then you could tie all of this together in a storyline sense and make it all make sense. And like I said, we'll get a killer match out of it between Hangman and Takeshita, and then that will get us to Full Gear, and then whatever they're going to do at Full Gear in November. So that's my best guess, because honestly, there is absolutely nobody else right now, nobody else who is set up to be the obvious next challenger for Hangman Page. But that was your All Out 2025 card. Again, I thought it was definitely the stronger of the two shows. It's a little weird to even compare. I mean, people wanted to know my opinion on it even last night, so I didn't watch the main event yet, so I didn't feel comfortable commenting on the full show. But yeah, if I'm going to compare the two shows, this was the stronger of the two shows. And by the way, this was also the larger of the two shows, so it's kind of hard to compare because one show had 5 matches, and how many matches at this point? I didn't even count. Double digits. This had a lot more matches than 5. So it's not exactly apples to apples, but just having watched both shows, you know, objectively, I look at them and go, yeah, All Out was the stronger card. It had better matches, and if you don't like it, it's great. That's why it's my opinion and not yours.